Linkin Park is rumored to be reuniting and will feature a new lead singer. Ever since late Linkin Park vocalist Chester Bennington's tragic suicide in 2017, the storied nu metal band have been on an understandable hiatus. After all, Bennington's death was traumatizing and his voice was one of a kind, unique, and clearly identifiable. Because when listening to Linkin Park, you can f***ing tell that you are listening to Linkin Park, meaning that no one can really 100% replace him. And that's even before asking whether or not Linkin Park should continue on and feature a new lead vocalist, something that the band have decided not to pursue until reportedly recently, to where they're rumored to be recruiting a female singer and are entertaining reunion offers for 2025. And that begs the question, should Linkin Park go down this route? Should they return in a new form, or just let the band's legacy rest? It's just a conundrum that can spark intense debate on par with one's favorite style of pizza or discussing Star Wars with Star Wars fans, because everyone will have an opinion on it and only mine will be right. Them's just the facts. And for that, Linkin Park could just go either way on this. There's questions on whether or not this new incarnation will be good, or if it will be done in a way that feels tasteful, a way that's respectful. After all, this is a quagmire that many bands have had to navigate over the years. If anything, the idea of continuing on or reuniting with surviving band members, even though some of the most important members of those said bands have passed on, all while having new people fill in for those aforementioned deceased comrades, is nothing new. Linkin Park just wouldn't be the first to keep carrying on the musical torch if they were to go down this path. And honestly, I think a reunion could work. After all, many bands with important legacy vocalists who had passed on, like the late Lane Staley in Alice in Chains and Wayne Static in Static X, have continued playing live and even have made new music in a way that respects the legacy of those departed band members, all while also allowing the remaining musicians in those bands to move forward both creatively and personally. Because while folks like Lane Staley and Wayne Static were the voices of their respected musical outfits, they weren't the only important members of those groups. And Linkin Park is the same. Even though Chester Bennington's clean singing and harsh screams are iconic to anyone who listened to small town FM rock radio in the 2000s, I just really dated myself. It is worth stating that the other members in Linkin Park also helped pave the way for the band's overall success. Like, the group just wouldn't be the same without Mike Shinoda's hip-hop sensibilities, Brad Delson's creative guitar riffs that inspired many a nu metal anthem, Joe Hahn's turntable skills creating an extra dimension to Linkin Park's sound, Rob Borden's percussion that complemented every other member in front of him, and Dave Phoenix Farrell's bass play, which set the foundation for so many Linkin Park songs. All these band members are just important and are a part of why and how Linkin Park became so successful, especially when discussing their first two albums in Hybrid Theory and Meteora, arguably two of the greatest nu metal albums ever, LPs that defined many angst-ridden childhoods like mine with numerous certifiable bangers and quotable lines. Because my sister ate my leftover pizza and these wounds will just not heal, god damn it. And while I have my issues with some of the band's later work after those two albums, Linkin Park still has an important legacy in rock and music history in general that deserves to be celebrated, both by the musicians who created that music and by the fans who have an emotional connection with it. And for that reason alone, I'd be more than okay with Linkin Park continuing on with a new lead vocalist, at least if the reports are true and that the remaining members of Linkin Park want to reform. Because whether that just means reunion shows or even new music, I support what the band potentially wants to do here. On one final note, Linkin Park forging ahead would also redefine the end of Linkin Park. After all, when it comes to the end of the band at the moment, we can't help but dwell on the tragedy associated with it, the painful end of this legacy act. And Linkin Park doing reunion shows would allow the band to no longer end in tragedy, but instead to continue on and persevere. Sure, Bennington's passing is a core part of Linkin Park's story and will be forever, but the rest of Linkin Park can decide whether or not to let that be the conclusion to the band's story, proving that Bennington's passing doesn't have to be Linkin Park's end.